All right, it is noon and we've got definitely a few folks in attendance, which I think is great. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I really appreciate you all joining in. Check out the chat for some links and information that I'm sending through here. The first bit of information is about our listserv. Let's start with introductions though before we talk any more about that. Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Metzger and I am an education program specialist for the Sokolov-Miller family financial and life skills center here at Penn State. And like I said before, I really appreciate you joining in on today's session. We're talking about financial clutter. Take a minute as we do these introductions. I'm going to open up a poll question for you. Take a minute and let me know a little bit about yourself. Feel free to drop any notes into the chat about, how you heard about us. If this is your first session, if this is your 15th webinar you've joined in on, all good information. I'd love to hear from you. While you are doing that, I'm going to cover just a few quick reminders about today's session. So first of all, this session is being recorded. You should have heard that prompt when you joined in. So if you do need to step out early, that's not a problem. Don't sweat it. You can catch this webinar, the recording of it on our website. It will be posted a little bit later on this week. And the link for that, I'm going to go ahead and paste it into the chat for you. There's the link to our website where you can access this recording if you need to after the fact. The second reminder that I want to give is about the chat box, which I'm currently making great use of. It is available during the session to ask questions and share your ideas. So you are welcome to post as little or as much as you'd like there. If I miss a question, I'm going to try to keep my eye on the chat as we go along. But if I miss a question, I promise I'll get back to you at the end of the session to answer it. So hang tight if you can. Like I said, if you have to leave the webinar, that's okay too. You can catch the recording to get that answer to the question you may have missed if you need. I also want to say that it is possible in this webinar to come off of mute and to speak out loud, to share your ideas and ask those questions audibly. And if that's something that you'd prefer to do, all you need to do is raise your virtual hand and I can unmute you if I know you're interested. In fact, I want to be sure that that functionality is available. Can somebody please raise their virtual hand as a sample just so that I know it works? Ah, excellent. Okay, that's great. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. So yeah, raise that hand if you want to come off mute to ask a question or share an idea. Absolutely, totally welcome to do that. I'm going to end this poll and share out our results. Who do we have here today? So we've got mostly staff and faculty, and in the summer months, that is to be expected, but we also have some graduate students and undergraduate students here. Welcome everyone, alumni as well. I'm so excited that you're here, and I'll debrief for myself later how you heard about this webinar, but we are always just so interested in bringing more and more people in and getting all this good information. So word of mouth, let folks know that you came here today, let them know what we're all about at the Financial and Life Skills Center and that we've got some good information around personal finance. We care about everyone's financial empowerment. So if you heard some good things here today, be sure to share that with your friends and loved ones and let them know to tune in. In 2 weeks, we'll be back later this month talking about environmental stewardship. So that may be something of interest to you or others. And you should spread the word about it because it's all good stuff. All right, let's get this one started. This is going to be a shorter webinar than what is typical for us, which if you've got lots of things to do today, I think that'll be great for you. So today we're talking about financial clutter, and to kind of get us warmed up with this topic, I'm going to give you I'm going to ask you to engage in a quick exercise in the chat. I want you to write down the first thing that comes to your mind when you finish this sentence that you see on the screen. Financial clutter is what? Let's take a minute really quick. First thing that comes to mind, financial clutter is paper everywhere. Okay. What else is it? I'm going to put mine in the chat too. And I believe it. I believe my sentiment to be true, and I'll talk about that later. So financial clutter is paper everywhere. It's too many accounts. If you ask me, it's a money hitman, which might have you going, what is that all about? And I'll tell you. Anything else that financial clutter is, in your opinion? And maybe you're here to define it. Maybe you don't have some, maybe you can't finish that sentence yet because you're not sure exactly what financial clutter is. That's okay. We're going to talk about that today. Oh, financial clutter is unknown subscriptions. I think yes. In fact, I just had my calendar remind me to cancel my Apple Music subscription on Friday last week. Completely forgot about it. It was like a 6-month free trial. I'm so glad I put that in my phone because I absolutely would have forgotten to cancel that otherwise. And that would have been just like some clutter and money down the drain that I don't want to deal with. So yeah, all right, all good stuff. So we've got some ideas in the group here of what financial clutter is. Maybe financial clutter is not known to us fully yet, but we're going to demystify that here and figure out how we can tackle it. I mean, the word clutter itself, if you're familiar with that, should kind of lend you to thinking this maybe isn't a great thing in our financial lives. So financial clutter, it might not be visible. It may or may not be. And as with all kind of messes that we sometimes carry around in life, it can negatively impact us. And, specifically in the case of our finances, our financial health. But the good news is, like with all other kinds of messes that we deal with, dirty laundry, a messy garage, junk all over our cars, trying to clean that out, we can deal with it. We can deal with financial clutter. We can clean it up and we can ensure that it is not an obstacle in this financial journey that we are all on. And it's not going to get in the way of keeping a nice, clean financial plan for ourselves. So, to be organized or not to be organized, that is the question. And I'm guessing that most of us want to be organized, but maybe sometimes are feeling like this individual on the left in a space of chaos. What gives? We want to be organized. Some of us maybe are organized. There are moments of chaos and clutter. What gives? What things in our financial lives are contributing to this chaos? So this is where I'm going to ask you to go back to the chat, and I want to know firsthand from you, what is financial clutter in your life? Like I've seen you write too many accounts, paper everywhere, unknown subscriptions. Is that all? What are the things that are contributing to the chaos in our financial lives? And what is making it hard to stay organized? As you think of what you'd like to write there, I'll share firsthand for myself. I have a stack of, there's paper in my hallway. Like when I first, and I just moved. This shouldn't be something I could admit because I just moved into the home that I'm in. I shouldn't have any messes yet. But already in my entranceway of my house, there's a little table, and on that table is a stack of mail and some unopened, open and unopened envelopes kind of staring me down each evening as I walk in. To me, that is what's contributing to the financial chaos and clutter in my life as a sample. I also, I was going to grab my wallet. I forgot to. I can't grab it from here, but I wanted to show you there's a little bit of a receipt cluster happening in my wallet right now too. So that's the kind of financial clutter and chaos that I'm dealing with. We also are reporting a lack of an up-to-date budget as financial clutter. And it's interesting because you can't necessarily see that, right? It's not necessarily tangible, but it still clutters our mind. These things, visible or invisible, it kind of weighs us down. Receipts, bill statements, budgets that are not up to date, bank statements coming in, investment account updates that we've opened and left on the table, insurance paperwork, tax forms, a drawer full of warranty booklets. That's also true for me. I've got a lot of warranty booklets laying around. Collectibles, family heirlooms. If you inherited anything from a family member, that might be worth something, but it could also feel like clutter that's in your house. Coins, something as small as a coin too contributes to that clutter. As we have that kind of laying around, these things are contributing to the chaos that we might be feeling around our finances. And organizing can be hard because we don't necessarily have as much time as we'd like to sit down and go through all of the receipts and go through the stack of paper that we've got, or go through the heirlooms that we may have inherited and don't necessarily want. But to offload that stuff thoughtfully takes time, and we don't necessarily have a lot of it. And it may just feel cumbersome to deal with overall because there's a lot. I get it. Maybe at the core of this all, though, is not knowing what's okay to toss and how to deal with the chaos when we're looking at it. Our financial lives are so very important. Everything seems and feels important because it has to do with your money. And so sometimes letting go or knowing what's okay to let go can be difficult. It's not necessarily an easy judgment call to make. And unless we outright do this learning for ourselves to know, well, what gives, what can I toss, we might just hold on to it all over time. I know that's been a symptom I've experienced in my adult life for sure. And I'll speak to some more of my personal stories as we go along. But the good news is we can deal with it all, right? We can deal with it all. And that's what this session is about here today. How we can go from, get my little laser pointer out here, how we can go from all the chaos to nicely organized financial papers. So let's talk about that. Why clean? We got to start with the why, of course, right? Before we get into any of the strategies, we got to start with our why. Why do we need to find the time to go through all of the papers that we have, through all of our file cabinets, through all of our digital files, to get cleaned up, to get rid of the clutter that we've just kind of talked about or that you've been thinking about? Here are a few good reasons that I'd like to offer you. First off, less clutter means better control of your money. I think about, so one of my bad habits is I will I'll open mail from my bank and from my credit card and from whoever else money wise, right? I'll open it, I'll look at it, I'll make a plan to deal with it, and I'll just kind of set the paper back down, but walk away and not take immediate action on it. When I think about, having less clutter and more control of my money, I think about the potential of bills becoming lost in that stack that I've got at home and potentially going unpaid, or being misplaced altogether. And that's impacting, my credit, right? Late fees, the consequences there can be quite significant, even maybe as severe as identity theft. Like it just, if we sat and brainstormed what are all the terrible things that could happen if we're not careful with our bills and we let those things go unaddressed, or we misplace them, the consequences can be quite severe. I also think, this, when it comes to tax season, we just got past it not too long ago. When it comes to tax season, if you're organized, it's going to be less of a headache to deal with your taxes and get your taxes done, because you're already going to have your documents in place, neatly organized, ready to be retrieved the moment that you need them. I think that's, if you hate doing taxes, you might hate it a little bit less if you know at least that you're organized with all of your tax documents before you get started. So, hey, there's one good reason, right? Now, cleaning up financial clutter, it's also a great way to sharpen your financial skills. It's a chance to put what you've learned about budgeting and debt management into practice. And I'll say, finally, decluttering your finances can help reduce your stress. And that might be what kind of brings us here today, that we know we've got some financial clutter at home. It's weighing us down. It's weighing on our mind. We might be losing a little bit of sleep over it. We might be worried about it. Let's deal with that, right? Let's not let our personal finances be a contributor to stress and all of the other icky feelings that can come up in life. We've got enough going on. Money shouldn't be contributing to any of this. I'd be lying if I said that it's not going to take any effort to get your finances organized, right? These are good reasons, and you are feeling motivated to do this work, but it's not necessarily going to be easy, not necessarily going to be a walk in the park, but I've got some strategies to make it a smooth trip for you, right? And the payoffs are going to be worth it. So let's figure out how we do this. Oh, and I should mention here too, these guys pop up on the screens. I forget they're here. If you're trying to set a sequence for yourself too, right? Of like, when am I going to take stock and start to do this work of cleaning my finances up? Well, it's that season for garage sales as it is, let your regular spring cleaning kind of coincide with cleaning up your personal finances. So here we go. Step one. I've got a financial mess at home. I've got some clutter. I need to deal with it. Where do I begin? First things first is you need to identify the clutter, because you cannot clean up anything that you're not familiar with. If you don't know what it is and you're not sure where to find it. So this is the first step. Make a list of all of your financial accounts and collect all your financial documents. And I actually think that this could be a pretty fun step. And here's why I say that. I'm going to put a link in the chat for you here. So as you're looking around for your financial documents, you're looking in your house, your car, shoe boxes. You may have some stuff in a shoe box or a regular tote box at home. You're kind of unpacking and looking for all of these things. As you're looking around in the physical space, make sure you're also looking around in the virtual space for your financial documents. And there may be a place to look that you weren't even aware of. I'm going to go ahead and put this link in the chat to you all. So something I learned in my adult life, I probably didn't need to take advantage of it any earlier than my adult life, but I found out a couple of years back that I had some unclaimed property in the state of Illinois, where I'm originally from. I had like part of an unclaimed paycheck from where I worked in college out there that the state treasury department was holding on to and just waiting for me to claim. Look around for your financial clutter. Financial clutter has a negative connotation, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. Financial clutter could mean unclaimed portions of tax refund, unclaimed paychecks that you didn't even know were out there, money that you maybe have inherited from somebody, but you didn't realize you had inherited it. I mean, I don't know, the potential possibilities are numerous. But what I posted in the chat, if you're a Pennsylvania resident, the PA Treasury has an unclaimed property website where you can plug in your personal information to see if there's anything out there attached to you waiting to be claimed, a sum of money, either under $100 or over $100. Go take a look for that. It's kind of the exciting part of cleaning up our financial clutter. Sometimes it's not our clutter, it's the government's clutter, but it belongs to us and we need to go out there and get it. And that's fun. It's fun to find that you have money out there and waiting for you. All right, so you are checking high and low for all of your financial documents, and we'll talk about those in just a second. But I also want to use this slide to tell you a really quick story about why I think financial clutter is a money hitman. So I went a little bit more metaphorical here. A few years back, and this is relevant to identifying clutter, a few years back, I put my list together and I realized that I didn't have all the information handy that I needed for a savings account that I had. I had a few accounts and there was one that I didn't have the bank account information for, and I needed to get a hold of it. This was an account I had back in Illinois, and it was one that my dad had opened for me when I was a kid, but it wasn't a primary account. So at any rate, I didn't do much with this account, but in my inventory list, I realized, oh, I gotta get a hold of this information. So I called up the bank, and when I asked them about the account, they told me, very emotionless, very matter-of-factly, they told me that the account had been closed. And I was sent into instant confusion and panic. Like, what? I don't understand. What do you mean? Where's my money? And it turns out that due to inactivity, the bank began assessing a fee, which in turn, progressively drained the bank, the balance of the account. And eventually what was remaining in that account that I had was turned over to the state. It's called cheating. I think the pronunciation is a little funny. Cheating is what that's called. And it's a real thing that can happen, but I didn't know. So I tell you this story as kind of like a cautionary tale. I wish I had taken inventory of all of my personal financial accounts and documents way earlier on in my adult life, because I know that if I had done that sooner, I would have caught that this savings account that was in my name was inactive and potentially subject to fees and being turned over to the state. It was a really frustrating situation. I'm annoyed I didn't know this sooner, but hopefully I can let that be a cautionary tale and something that motivates you to like, oh yeah, I really should get out there and get a wrangle on all of my things. Do I have money that's unclaimed by the state? Is there an account that belongs to me that's inactive, and could something potentially happen to the funds in that account? That should hopefully motivate you, right? Let that story be a call to action to go out there and take a look at all your financial clutter, because financial clutter could potentially be that money hitman. It took out a whole savings account of mine. And it's a really personal story. Folks make mistakes. I'm up here talking to you about personal finances, and it's mistakes do happen. It's what we can learn from them and proceed forward on that stronger financial footing that matters. And I was able to do that. And I want to give that information to you too, so that it can be useful. Now, as you're gathering this list, as you're making your inventory, you're maybe wondering to yourself, okay, Sarah, aside from a savings account, what else am I looking for? You're looking online, in your shoe boxes, in your house, for your bills, pay stubs, bank statements, tax forms, your retirement and investment documents, warranties and user manuals, policies and deeds, permanent records. And we'll talk more on what some of these things are. You're looking for all of this and trying to find it so that you can begin to sort it and discard what you do not need. Is there anybody out there who, you can raise your hand for this actually too. Is there anybody out there who's a big fan of Marie Kondo and the KonMari method, I believe it's called, for organization, like organizing your house? Okay. I wondered, I haven't read the book. I've seen the show on Netflix, but it's a similar idea, right? That, in the KonMari method, you just kind of gather everything together, dump, sort categorically, and then get rid of the things that you don't need. Similar ideas are going to come up here in this webinar. We're going to find everything, right? That's step one, find all of our financial documents. We're going to get them organized, and we're going to start to sort and discard what we don't need, okay? And these are the things that you're looking for here. All right, now once you have it ready, prepared, you've got your piles put together, it's time to begin cleaning. And in this process, I'm going to first start by suggesting that maybe you buy a cross shredder if you don't already have one, a shredding machine. And I say that not just to kind of be flashy in your cleaning strategy, but it's really a great investment to have a shredder to be able to take your really sensitive financial documents and shred them and cross shred them and get them minced up into tiny little pieces and recycled, knowing that folks out there trying to steal your identity are not going to be able to do that. They're not going to be able to get their hands on your account information that you're discarding because you've cut it up really finely, and it's going to be near impossible to reassemble, right? And there are people that dive out in dumpsters. There are folks out there who are trying to get a hold of your financial information by going through your trash. So as you're discarding your documents, make sure that they are being torn up really thoroughly, or just, to save your hands and wrists the trouble, buy a cross shredder. I guess unless, of course, you are trying to get shredded, right, by shredding, which if that's the case, then go ahead and shred by hand. But I'll let you make that call. I've seen shredders for like $30 on Amazon. Definitely a nice investment if you can make one for yourself. As a rule of thumb, let me bring some pieces of information up here. As a rule of thumb, if you can get a document online for free, you don't need to keep it in its paper form. So as you're getting your shredding hands ready, your cross shredder ready, and you're thinking about, well, okay, what am I going to get rid of? If you can get a copy of it for free online, you don't need to keep the paper version of it, okay? And that's, I think, true for a lot of our financial documents nowadays. A lot of it is available online. There may be some documents, though, that you need in the future that are difficult to obtain copies of, or they may cost you some money to obtain copies of those. And if that's the case, keep those. But the question becomes, for how long? Okay, so a good question just came in. Does that mean we do not need to keep credit card statements? If you have access to those statements online, you do not need to keep the paper version of them, right? And, I guess I should say, do whatever you're most comfortable with, right? I'm advocating for a decluttered financial lifestyle out there, but if it makes you feel better to hold on to your paper statements and you've got a system in place in that aspect that works for you, go for it. I'm making the assumption that folks have come here today because they've got some clutter going on in their lives that they want to deal with, right? And so that's what we're talking about here is what can we get rid of? And for your credit card statements, if you know you can access them online, you do not need to keep them. You can go ahead and shred the ones that you receive. After you've done, you can kind of cross-check whatever you need to with your receipts. I will say a lot of credit card companies are interested in paperless billing also. So, if you haven't already been prompted by your credit card company to enroll in paperless billing, they probably will. I know it, for my utilities, for my internet bill, I think it's an extra $5 or $10 off my bill because I'm enrolled in paperless billing and auto pay. So companies are trying to incentivize us to be a little bit more paper free as well, which is always nice. So the other question that comes up, do you recommend going paperless with your accounts? For me, I do, and it works for me. This ties right into the next webinar on environmental stewardship, right? And how our personal finances kind of play into impacting the world around us. I mean, going paperless as much as we can is good for the environment. But again, it comes back to what you're comfortable with. Right? If you know that you're okay to go paperless, you can remember to pay that bill on time, even though you don't have the paper statement coming to you every month, go for it. But if having a paper billing statement, my significant other is actually that way. He doesn't love going paperless because he likes to get the bill each month, reminding him that here's the amount due, here's the due date, he pays that bill and moves on from there. It's just personal preference, right? So what to keep and for how long? So we've got this idea of a document life cycle that comes into play here. So when you're looking at your big stack of papers and you've got your shredder ready to go and you're trying to decide what to keep and what to toss, please keep in mind that documents do have a life cycle, right? They are living, so to speak, and they will die at some point. And at that point of the death of the document, we don't necessarily need to keep it in paper form anymore, or maybe even in digital form, though digital documents tend to take up less physical space. They still can contribute to clutter. So let's talk about these life cycles for a moment here. So what do we keep for 1 year? Of all the things that we receive, what do we keep for 1 year? Paycheck stubs, utility bills, canceled checks, bank statements, and the quarterly investment statements that you might get for the investments you have, or that you should be getting. But those that you receive, these we want to hold on to for at least a year. And here's why. Your paycheck stubs, you're going to keep those to compare them to your W-2 at the end of the year, right? When you're, gearing up for tax season, you want to be able to make that comparison to your W-2 and your Social Security earnings statement. Your utility bills, hang on to them. You can shred them after a year, but hang on to them unless you are claiming a home or office deduction on your taxes. And then, you're going to need to keep them at least for that year, if not a little bit longer after you filed that tax return upwards of like 3 years, we'd say. But that doesn't necessarily apply to everyone, right? It just kind of depends on your tax circumstances. Canceled checks, some people still use them. I don't know many people who still use paper checks. I do occasionally, but if you do have some canceled checks, make sure you hang on to them for at least a year before you discard them, keep them safe. Bank statements, like we talked about, so credit cards, your savings account, your checking account, those kind of statements, if you can't get them online and for free, hang on to them. keep them at least till the end of the year statement that you receive so that you can do a comparison of those. But again, of course, if you can go paperless and that's something that you're okay with, go for it. And with those quarterly investment statements, keep them again until you get that end of year, that annual statement to make a comparison between each. You just want to make sure that everything checks out. Robot accountants are pretty accurate, but sometimes mistakes happen. So we want to be vigilant in catching those mistakes if we need, because it's on us, right? It's our money. Now for 3 years, documents to keep for 3 years, your income tax returns, you should keep for at least 3 years. You can be audited up to 3 years by the IRS for any reason, right? So there you go. 3 years is a great amount of time to keep in case you are audited. You've got all the documents you need to respond to the IRS. It can go up to 6 years though. So in terms of auditing, you could be audited up to 6 or even 7 years if you omitted more than 25% of your gross income, for example, on your taxes. And really, there's no statute of limitations if you've never filed a tax return, but you should have. So keep all of the kind of related documents for your taxes based on that timeline, depending on how you are filing, right? Medical bills, canceled insurance policies, hang on to those for 3 years. Sales records for a home, claiming capital gain, list of sales records for stocks, all supporting documents that you would have used for those tax returns, your annual investment statements after you sell your investments, hang on to all of that for your record keeping. But 3 years is about that length of time, the life cycle, at which point you might say, okay, it's been 3 years. I'm going to go ahead and shred these documents now. I'm more likely than not going to need them after this point in time. Now, finally, for 7 years, what do we keep for 7 years? Well, keep records of your satisfied loans, which means loans that you have paid in full, right? You're no longer making payments on them. Everything has been paid as expected. Also keep a hold of your student loan records. So, and we'll talk more about this. It's really important to hang on to those records for yourself, even though you know that your federal student loans, your private student loans, the government or your private lender have record of them. There may be reasons for you to have your own copies too, and we'll talk about that in just a moment here. So if you are a student and you have federal student loans, what do you need to keep is a great question. So like I said, just because the Department of Ed or your loan servicer has this information on file doesn't mean you shouldn't keep your own copies. So some things to keep related to your student loans. That master promissory note that you signed, that's a legal document and it's got all the details of your loan's terms included within it. So you're going to want to hang on to that because it contains essential loan information. And you want to hang on to that at least throughout the life of the loan. This way, if there's a dispute with the loan servicer, so let's say, for example, there's a changing hands in the loan servicer and that happens where you had Fed loan servicing and now you have Moella as your loan servicer. In that changing of hands, let's say your new loan servicer is claiming that your interest rate is 7.5%, but you know that your interest rate is fixed at 6.5%. Well, you've got that documentation from your master promissory note to back it up. So that's helpful to have. The monthly billing statements, though, that go along with your student loan repayment, if you haven't gone paperless, but you've set up your loan for automatic payment each month, you really don't need to hold on to these, right? It's the same idea as a credit card bill. If you can access that statement elsewhere, then you don't necessarily need to keep the bill for it. If you're getting any kind of mail correspondence about your loan being sold off, so that changing of hands between loan servicers, you're definitely going to want to keep a hold of the letter that you receive from your new servicer with it'll typically have that customer service information, payment instructions. You want to hang on to that and anything else that they send you until you're absolutely sure that everything has transferred from one lender to another. And that includes things like your auto pay without a problem. All right. Now, your 1098E form for taxes. So this is a form related to your loans that you get from your servicer each year, and that details how much money you've paid in your student loan interest the year prior. Hang on to that, because you could use that to make a deduction. I believe it's up to $2,500 from your prior year income potentially. And so that's an important document that you want to hang on to, at least for the year, so that come tax time, right, you've got that available for you. And even a little bit longer, up to those 3 years, because the IRS could audit you, right, for any reason within the 3 years after you file. If you are on an income-driven repayment plan, any documents that you get with that plan, you want to hang on to, because if you're on that type of repayment plan, you will need to recertify and reapply for that program year after year after year. And it just makes reapplying easier if you hang on to all the documents from the first time you did it, right? And ideally, hang on to all of that through the life of the loan. That's kind of the rule of thumb here too. All right, so a little bit more about this life cycle of records. As you're trying to decide what to keep and what to toss, it's helpful to know whether a document qualifies as a permanent record, an active record, or a temporary record. So we've got a hard and fast kind of life cycle: 1 year, 3 years, 7 years. We can also look at our documents as either permanent, active, or temporary. All right, so your permanent records, feels like your like record from high school, like whatever you did wrong, your permanent record, it follows you forever. This is not so bad, but your permanent record does follow you forever, right? These are the records that you're going to hold on to throughout life, and they include your marriage or divorce certificate, separation agreements, anything having to do with a spouse, a former spouse, your children, custody agreements, any kind of legal documents. That's going to follow you wherever you go, and you want to keep those somewhere safe. Birth certificates, death certificates, your social security card, wills, living wills, and advanced medical directives are also documents that you're going to want to keep somewhere safe. These are permanent. And while some, we can replace most of them, it could be costly, it could be time consuming. And sometimes these permanent records are the ones that we need to have on hand readily. So as we don't want to have to go sifting through a full file cabinet to find them. Permanent records also include trust, estate documents, power of attorney, paperwork, deeds, record of paid mortgages, deeds to title for your car, as well as tax returns. And now I say tax returns as a potential permanent record here, which I know probably sounds a little bit not in line with what I said earlier, like hold on to your tax paperwork for at least 3 years because you could be audited for any reason. You may wish to hold on to your tax returns forever if you know that your heirs might need that information from the returns at some point later on down the road. So when we think about our children or any heir that we have, we may wish to hold on to those documents for longer than 3 years. And here's the thing, I feel like for the first couple of years that I filed taxes when I got a job in high school and then in college, like the stack of paperwork every year just grows and grows and grows and grows. If you can just keep these documents in a digital version, in a digital file, and have that safely secured on your computer, you have the materials, you have everything stored for as long as you feel like you need it, but you don't have that physical space being taken up. So utilize the power of digital space if you can. All right, question coming in. Once your child reaches their majority, do you still need to keep the custody agreement documents? Majority. I'm not really sure what, maybe could you clarify the question? I'm not sure I understand, but I will come. Oh, okay. Okay, by age 18. Great. So once your child reaches the age of 18, do you still need to keep the custody agreement documents? I don't have a specific answer for that specific question. I don't know, but I certainly would suggest if you're a student or if you're on campus, student legal services might be able to give a little bit of directive there. If you've got an attorney that you work with already, they can, I'm sure, clarify that answer, give you an answer that's much better than mine, which is, I don't know. Of course, you can keep anything as long as you want, but I don't know what the recommendation would be in that specific circumstance. Okay, great question though. Thank you. Thank you. All right, so on to your active records. So active records include records that are like happening, right? There's things happening. You're actively referring back to these records or using them. So any kind of contract that you've entered into, so that might be for some work around the house. I think about, I was under contract as a public school employee once upon a time. That was an active record that I wanted to hold on to for the time that I was employed in the public school. Insurance documents, homeowners insurance and auto insurance policies, hang on to those until the renewal arrives, and then you can discard the previous year, or whatever your window of time is, previous 6-month policy. You can go ahead and get rid of that. Stock certificates, so what you receive when you purchase that stock that you've got for yourself, hang on to those for the time that you have the stock and it's active. Property records you're going to want to hold on to, and this includes original settlement statements from when you purchased your house, since it shows closing costs and settlement fees paid. And these things may be added to the cost basis calculation when you go to sell your home, so hang on to all of that. It's you're gonna have to circle back to that at some point. Stock records, we want to keep a hold of records of your pension and retirement plans, so contributions that you're making each pay period annually. You want to hold on to all of that and take a look at it pretty regularly. I'd say at least every 6 months, if not on an annual basis, right? Your property tax records, hang on to those in case you need to dispute a bill. Hang on to them until the dispute is resolved, hoping for favorable outcomes, of course, right? And then any kind of home improvement records, hang on to these for at least 3 years after the due date for the tax return. So that includes the income or loss on the asset when it's sold. So you want to have record of, yeah, I renovated that bathroom, or yeah, I put in these appliances. Hang on to all of that for yourself and for your benefit, as long as it's active. Temporary records, this third category of records, I like talking about this life cycle because it's different, and it's, I don't know, we maybe don't give a lot of thought always to this life cycle, the life cycle of a receipt, or the credit card billing statements that we get. So it's really important to save receipts for budgeting purposes, is what I mean to say. So if you're going out and you're making a cash transaction, you want to bring the receipt home with you. Please don't say no to the receipt, which is always an option we get. Do you want the receipt? Oh, no, thank you. Try to bring it with you, right, if you can, and know that it has a really short lifespan. So try to not be like me. I do have receipts in my wallet that I really need to go and take a look at that sometimes I forget about. But take the receipt, go home, add the transaction into your budget, and then dispose of the receipt right away. So for cash transactions, that's really important unless you have a perfect memory and you remember where you spent your cash and you know exactly how much you spent on every single purchase. You want to have the receipt with you to input that transaction into your budget sheet and then get rid of the receipt. You don't need it anymore. So grocery bills, personal purchases, anywhere you're kind of getting a receipt, that's the life cycle for it. Now, receipts that you're making with a credit card or your debit card, you may need to hang on to those for a little bit longer than you would hold on to a receipt for a cash transaction. And that's because you want to be able to cross-check the receipt for your credit card transaction with the billing statement. You want to make sure that it all checks out. So depending on your preference, you could look at your credit card receipt and log into your bank account, log into your credit card account through your app and check to see that the numbers match, that the transaction numbers match. If that's the case, you can check right away and toss the receipt. If you'd rather wait for the billing statement to come out where you have your month's worth of credit card receipts and you've got your credit card billing statement, you can cross-check all of those individually, make sure that they check out. And once you know they check out, you can toss those receipts as well. Shred them up, get rid of them. You don't need to keep them any longer. So these temporary records, they have a much shorter lifespan than some of these other documents that we deal in. Once you're organized, once you've kind of done this work, you've sorted through your documents, you've decided here's what I need to keep, here's what I can shred and get rid of, you need a plan moving forward, right? So as not to find yourself in that kind of cluttered situation again, we suggest using a guide to keep yourself organized. And that guide can come from tools and aspects of your money life that you're already invested in. So if you've got a budget, you can use your budget as a guide to organizing your paper documents or your digital documents and the taxes that you file. So if you are earning an income and you're filing taxes, you can use your tax filing documents as a guide as well. So this monthly budget as an organizational tool, it really just means that you're using your expense categories as a guide for reviewing, storing, or disposing your financial documents. Think of it like a checklist. You can create your checklist based on your current budget or build from the samples that I have on this slide, as well as the next slide. Most consumers, they have somewhere between 10 to 15 expense categories in their budget, which means they're going to have about 10 to 15 categories guiding them as they're cleaning up and keeping their financial documents in order. So you may actually have an accordion file that's labeled saving, housing, utilities, food. And within that accordion file, you've got your saving account statements, you've got your stocks, bond information, any of the investment updates that you're receiving. You can store that in your savings tab. Your housing tab can include your mortgage information or your rent information, your lease information, fees, property tax, insurance documents. You can use your budget as a guide for organizing your digital and paper documents. I personally like this. It makes sense to me. And if you're engaging with your budget regularly, then it's a reminder to at least hopefully on that monthly basis, take a look at all of your financial papers to make sure that the clutter is not slowly building and mounting up behind you. And suddenly at the end of the year, you're like, holy cow, where did all that come from? You can also use your tax forms as a guide. It's another tool to organize yourself. If you, for example, file the 1040, the form 1040, and you're itemizing deductions, and you know that you're going to need to keep each expense receipt in your files to make filing your tax return at the end of the year easier, you can use your tax form checklist to keep organized with these related documents throughout the course of the year as well. I think it would be beneficial to folks to incorporate a bit of both, right? Using that budget that you've got and using tax forms as a guide to organizing these documents that you have so as not to be inundated with clutter. All right, now, as we wrap this up, as you're cleaning and you're wondering, okay, Sarah has told me here's what is worthy of being shredded, here's what's worthy of keeping and for how long, and here's how I would categorize it, and here's how I'll keep myself organized moving forward. How often do I need to come back to these financial records and review them? Here are some suggestions. So for example, with your W-4 form that you fill out when you start a job, right? This withholdings form, check in on it at least once a year. Each time your personal situation changes, you may wish to withhold more or less from your paycheck as your life circumstances change. So check in on that annually. Insurance. Our employers are already, we have to, during open enrollment, right, elect our insurance benefits, make any changes if we wish to. That can happen on an annual basis. And some of these records that we have to take a look at or should be taking a look at, there's already kind of systems and procedures in place that make us look at them, but some don't. Some are on us. Our free credit report, nobody's twisting my arm telling me every November, Sarah, go and check your credit report. That's on us to do. And we should be doing that annually, right? Anytime things change in our lives, these, big changes. I moved to a house, I had a kid, I started school, I graduated. Think big life events should be prompting us to take a look at our personal finances. I just moved to a new house. I have to do a lot of updating of addresses. While I'm updating addresses with my various accounts, I'm looking into those accounts to make sure everything is still as it ought to be, right? All right, so some final parting words. Oh, and I like this in the chat. Sorry, I just got an eye on this. Mint helps me immensely to keep track. I love the idea of Mint. I can't use Mint because my bank is not, it's too small of a bank. It doesn't connect with Mint, which is a little bit annoying, but I love the automaticity of Mint as a tool, mint.com, to help you keep organized with all of your various financial accounts, and in turn your financial documents. Yeah, I love that. Great suggestion. Some final tips here, strategies for success. Purge and merge. Purge, merge, and back up. So have some sort of filing system where you are regularly looking at your documents, getting rid of what you don't need, merging any accounts if you feel like that's, a good option to consolidate your student loans, to consolidate from 3 savings accounts to 1 or 2 savings accounts. You just it's going to depend on you and your financial picture, but be thinking about what's good for you. How can you take advantage of this time that you're spending going through all your financial paperwork? Purge and merge. Designate. There we go. Designate a safe space too for all these documents. Whether it's physical or digital, if you've got a file cabinet at home, if you've got a lockbox at home, a fireproof safe, or you're taking advantage of a safe deposit box at the bank, keep the important documents secure. And that's true online as well. So keep things password protected, keep your passwords secret, change them regularly, make sure that nobody can get a hold of all of these really sensitive financial documents you've taken the time to look through. And consider a financial emergency kit for yourself. So that might be literally having like a fireproof, a little fireproof box that you grab in the event of an emergency that has birth certificates, social security cards, deed information, all of the essentials that you wouldn't want anything terrible to happen to. Have them somewhere safe and ready to go in the event of an emergency. And even for these not so much of an emergency situations, like, oh my gosh, vaccine cards. I was in DC very recently, and actually a couple of months back too in DC. You didn't have proof of vaccine, you couldn't get into certain things, and it was like, oh, you forgot your card, you weren't organized with that kind of document. I know it's not financial in nature, but like, just as an example, like if we don't have these things handy, if I start a new job, I need to have my social security card, my birth certificate. There are certain documents that I need to have handy for meetings that are coming up. Where is this at, so that I can get a hold of it quickly and not be delayed in whatever I'm doing, right? And then finally, I'm going to do this, I think, after we're done with the webinar here. Clean up your wallet to prevent identity theft, loss of your cards, any other issues. If, speaking of social security cards earlier, if your social security card is in your wallet, I understand why some people carry them, but it's really a very sensitive piece of information about yourself and could, in the wrong hands, really compromise you and your financials. So my recommendation is, if you have your social security card in your wallet, but you don't need it there, take it out and find that safe place to put it, right? And then just anything extra receipts, extra credit cards that you don't need to be carrying around because you don't use all of them at the same time. Take them out and do a rotation, right? All right. So that's it in a nutshell. If you're looking to really get a hold of your financial papers, this financial clutter that you might be facing, staring down, that's how you do it. It can feel daunting and it might be a little bit challenging in the moment, but remember the tip that you saw in one of the earlier slides: get a paper shredder and grab a large pizza and whatever you love to binge watch on Netflix to kind of help the time go by as you do this work. It's really important work. And we can help with this too. You might think, well, how can the center touch base with me on this, right? What can Sarah and the team at the Financial and Life Skills Center do here to help? We can help you form that budget, right? As you're going through and you're taking stock of your finances, if you find that things are a little bit in disarray and you've got accounts that you're not managing, or you realize that because of this financial clutter that's a little bit tricky to tackle, that you've got debt mounting on your credit card or elsewhere, we can help you. We can be your Marie Kondo, right? And help you get organized in your finances and help you get that budget put together and help you apply these personal finance skills that you've been developing and sharpening for yourself. So do be in touch with that. Let us know how we can help. I'm going to put again in the chat box some information to help you stay in contact with us. We've got a survey in there as well. So there's the survey. Here's the link to the listserv. Get in contact with us and let us know how you can, how we can help you. Our website's got a whole host of resources. You see it on the screen there, financialliteracy.psu.edu. I'm also going to drop that back in the chat once more. We're here for you. And I'm still here for you too. So if we've got any questions as we wrap up here, I want to answer them. Love that you love these sessions. That's awesome. Okay. Are there any questions on financial clutter or otherwise anything I can address for the good of the order before we go here today?